Alright, so I have the Yamaha SK-15 Symphonic Ensemble synthesizer here. This guy came out in 1981, and its siblings came out 2 years earlier. The 10 came out in 1979, and the 20, 30, and 50D came out in 1980. So this guy, pretty cool, only has 3 sections to it, an organ, strings, and Poly-Synth, but still a lot of fun. You just have 7-note polyphony, and a couple other effects down here, which we'll go over in just a minute. Alright, so first place we should start is probably general controls, like the output, which is obviously going to control our general output. And then we got pitch, which I'm not going to demonstrate right now because I believe I have it in tune, but of course that could have changed. Analog gear could have warmed up a bit while I was setting this up. Well, below that we have the effects, but we'll go over that once we go over the sections of the synthesizer. So first place we'll start is the organ. To get this going, we'll first activate the voice. And then to hear something, we're going to have to pull in these sliders, and the closer they are to us, the higher the value, just like an organ drawbar. And by playing with these, we can introduce the different tones. And with the organ, you can see that all these are sines at differing wavelengths. So yeah, and when I press one key here, you can see that it is a pretty pure tone. Not a lot of overtones, not if any at all. But we would add complexity and overtones by introducing these different wavelengths. Sorry, some of these sliders are a little dirty. As you see, start introducing the different wavelengths, we add some complexity to it. We can also add a percussive element to this by sliding this down, just like the drawbar. Pull it closer to us, higher the value. And as you can see, it adds a bit of a knock to the beginning there. So that's it on, let's turn it off. While playing around with this, I found out that you can use the percussive element by itself without using any of the other tones of the organ. I don't know, I just thought it was a little interesting. Alright, so next we can move on to the strings. So let's turn off the organ and engage the strings. The string section is pretty simple, so we won't have to spend too much time here. So just like the organ, we have these different wavelengths that we introduce with these drawbars or sliders, whatever you want to call them. Alright, and with the strings we have a different wave shape. It's more like a sawtooth or a ramp of a sort, whatever you want to call it. And another thing to point out is you can see that we have overtones with these as well. So a little bit more complex than the organ. The organ was just simple sines, pure tones. A bit more complexity to these. Finally, we move on to the Poly-Synth section, which is probably the most interesting part, so let's turn off the strings and get that on. This one has its own volume slider unlike the other sections, so let's turn that up. Or down, in this case, which is the maximum value. Unlike the other sections where we introduce the different wavelengths, it is blended on one slider. short to long. This can also be shaped further with a filter here, which we have cut off and resonance. So yeah, now with this you can see we can kind of shape it a little bit. Now we got a little bit more of a sine. And playing around a bit, we can get some more interesting shapes. Next up would be EQ depth, which controls everything past it. At maximum value, which is up, we'll see a more prominent effect of everything over here. So I got a long attack on there. Okay. Sustain and release. So as you can see, it kind of has a swell coming in with that long attack. All right, now that we have that section covered, we can move on to some of the effects. We'll start with some of the effects right here. So I'm going to select slow attack, and this is going to add an even more slow attack to the strings and Poly-Synth section, and it's the only way to add a slow attack to the strings. So here's just a Poly-Synth. Again, rounded kind of. Turn it off, and then we got a little bit more of a block shape in the beginning. And let's show it with the strings. And there you go. And then it's a little more rounded out now. So next would be the sustain. This is going to add even more sustain than the envelope again. Also works for the strings and Poly-Synth. Alright, so kind of important to point out here that even though I have it engaged, there is a slider right next to it, which will control the length of the sustain. So now I have it at maximum value. And it holds that out pretty long now. Now with it off, it's gone. And we'll show with the strings as well. Short value, long value. Moving along, we can look over the vibrato. It is always on. So let's first introduce a voice here. I'm going to use the organ. And here we have controls for the length and speed, but we won't see an effect until I introduce some depth. And now we can see it's starting to dance a little. And bring it down, no longer dancing. Alright, and over here on the far left we have the Tremolo and Ensemble. So Ensemble is engaged as soon as you select what voice you want it on. And you can see on the waveform, we got a bit of shape to it because of the varying amplitude. And then we turn it off, we got steady block shape there. There's also a tremolo, which we can turn on here, which gives us a Leslie-like effect. Also note this is going to turn off the ensemble. And again, we have this varying amplitude, like a speaker is spinning around. And we can speed it up a bit by hitting the speed button. Of course, this will also work with the Poly-Synth. So let's do that. One thing I almost forgot was the Brilliance, which is kind of like a filter. Let me demonstrate it real quick. Mine's a little dirty, so once I slide through it, you're going to hear some noise, so just keep that in mind. But as you see, as I slide this down, it takes out some of the overtones, it mellows it out a bit. And then, yeah, back up here we get those overtones again, more prominently. Alright, now that I've gone over everything, let's play with it a little bit. Just kind of gonna randomly select a few things here.